Anime is good. Anime is finally good. After season after season after season of everyone complaining about this year's lack of quality anime series, fall 2020 is here, and my god, I don't think people can complain anymore. I'm not even gonna lie, this might be the most stacked anime season I've ever been a part of, and I know those are some eye-rollingly hyperbolic words, but this season just has everything. It has great sequels, promising originals, and worthwhile adaptations as far as the eye can see, and it makes me want to say that no matter what your taste or preference in anime is, I feel like there's probably something in here that will appeal to you. God knows the internet loves proving me wrong, but give this video a shot to the very end just in case. As per usual, I've checked out every single new anime series that's aired, and I'm here to tell you which ones are worth watching. There are some sequel omissions just because I'm not up to date. Don't lynch me, Haikyuu fans, it's a great series. But other than that, I feel like I've spent an obsessively long time making sure I watched everything that came out over the past few weeks. I'll also be giving a nice trademarked stamp to the best of the best that I think you should put at the top of your priority list. So take a load off and get some snacks for the most recommendations I've ever put in one of these videos, because this is every anime you should be watching from fall 2020. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Shonen Jump properties have been getting a lot more interesting lately. Whether or not you personally find them good, series like The Promised Neverland, Act Age, rest in peace, and whatever the hell Chainsaw Man is, are showing a new, more refreshing direction for the serializations Jump are allowing, and the latest adaptation from that branch of manga, while not as extreme as those, is showing a similar approach. Jujutsu Kaisen was not really what I was expecting going into it. Well, okay, I was kind of expecting the supernatural ghoul action premise just based on what I had seen of it beforehand, but what I wasn't expecting was that this series is really funny. It's witty, it's fast-paced. I was almost getting Mob Psycho vibes at some points. It's kind of the perfect complement to what a shonen action series should be in my opinion, and yet despite this mangaka clearly knowing how to write comedy really well, he might even be better at writing drama, because Jujutsu Kaisen's first episode genuinely made me cry within the first half of the episode. I'm not even kidding, and you have to see it to believe, but there's just this one scene in here that is so perfectly executed and endears you emotionally to its characters in such a short amount of time that I actually shed tears. I don't think anyone actually needed to be told to watch this series, but if you somehow haven't checked it out yet, MAPPA has been kicking so much ass on it so far, and I expect them to continue to all the way to the end. Let's take this opportunity to segue into another adaptation of a recent Shonen Jump property, if by recent I meant released over 30 years ago. Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai is like the ultimate throwback to what 90s shonen used to be, because it was what 90s shonen used to be. And I'm not gonna hide anything from you guys, I am a massive Dragon Quest fan. I've been one since I was a kid, I've played most of the games, but that doesn't mean I can't look at this series critically for what it is and tell you all what's up, and oh god, I already love it. The 2 episodes of Dai that I've watched so far have filled me with a pure childlike joy and happiness that I haven't experienced in a long time, and the fact that an anime series can induce that kind of emotion in a jaded shell of a human like me is something to commend. Don't get it twisted though, this is a standalone story and you can watch this series as someone who's never even touched a Dragon Quest game before. It's a pretty simple and straightforward action-adventure setup so far, like most Dragon Quest games are, but there's just a ridiculous amount of heart and soul evident behind the project that makes it endlessly enjoyable for me to watch. The art and animation is fantastic, the music is wonderful, and all of the characters are fun and entertaining to watch. And who knows, source readers have been hyping the hell out of the future arcs and characters in this series, and it's confirmed to be a long series, so there is a chance that this will turn into something very special by the end of its run. See you guys for that in 2 years. While we're talking about projects that have been revived after decades of dormancy, let's talk about a series I've gotten into relatively recently. Higurashi When They Cry Go is one of the most fascinating anime series that's released this year, and before I even talk about the series itself, I need to talk about the circumstances of which this was released. If you didn't know, Higurashi is a thriller/horror visual novel that was adapted into an anime by Studio Dean in 2006. I just watched it last year, it was good, I liked it a lot, no matter how many times those damn source readers tell me the pacing is bad. Fast forward to the beginning of 2020, over a decade after the original series had wrapped up, and a new Higurashi project is announced. Not much is said about it, but the new character design, studio, and a familiar looking visual makes people naturally assume it's a reboot. Go forward a little bit more, a PV is shown that covers a lot of scenes from the beginning of the series, and the project now has the title Higurashi When They Cry New. Okay, it's for sure a reboot, and I can't wait to watch this wild ride of Higurashi with a bunch of new viewers. Now fast forward to this season. The first episode drops and covers the exact content that episode 1 of the original Dean adaptation does, and the art, animation, and debatably character designs all look better. This is a pretty sweet reboot so far. But then, the second episode drops, and this is when the master plan of Ryukishio 7 fell into place. A new title is revealed, Higurashi When They Cry Go. And within the first scene of episode 2, it spoils one of the defining twists of everything that the original Higurashi series builds up to over an entire season. I really don't think it can be understated how ballsy it is to lure a bunch of new viewers into a supposed reboot, only to reveal that it's actually something completely different, and also simultaneously spoil all of those new viewers on one of its biggest twists. And you would probably think after hearing all of that I'm going to tell you to stay far away from this series if you haven't watched the original. But I'm not. Ryukishio 7 is a very smart man, and he's been very vague and deliberate with everything he's mentioned about this series. And one thing he's made clear is that this is a series to be watched by both old viewers and newcomers alike. Revealing that twist early? That's deliberate. The OP and ED imagery? That's deliberate. Everything this dude does is deliberate, and my guess is that it'll turn into a standalone story part of the Higurashi series, much like Fate Zero is a standalone story in the Fate series. Either way, I'm excited to see what this new series actually turns into, and so far the beginning episodes have reminded me why I enjoyed this series so much to begin with. Higurashi has always impressed me with the way it balances its lighthearted slice of life with that more tense thriller and grisly horror. It can switch those tones on a dime, sometimes even mid-conversation, and that's what keeps you constantly on the edge of your seat. This new adaptation seems to be doing just as good of a job on that as the original, and I personally think the Monogatari designs are better overall, although I will miss those glorious seizure faces in the original. I've given you the context surrounding this series, so now it's up to you if you're willing to give it a shot. But one thing's for sure, this is definitely going to be another crazy roller coaster to the end. Now that I've thoroughly broken the even pacing of this video, let's talk about something you definitely can't watch yet if you haven't seen the predecessor. Made in Abyss: Dawn of the Deep Soul adapts what most people, including myself, think is the absolute peak of the Made in Abyss story so far, and some even think it's one of the peaks of manga as a whole. And when I finished reading that arc and created my chapter review, this was still back when we weren't even sure what the Made in Abyss continuation would be, and I said something along the lines of, a movie would be fine, but I actually think I would prefer seeing this arc adapted as a second season. With a movie, it's a little bit harder because I feel like nothing less than 2 hours could fit this story in it. Like, if it was 90 minutes, you'd be rushing past plot arcs, and I do not want to see that for this arc. It does not deserve that at all. So if it does get a movie, I hope it's at least 2 hours plus. Well, guess what? The movie is a little bit over 90 minutes, and they did it. They did it. They did it. They adapted this arc about as well as you could have hoped them to, and I am so happy that they managed it as well as they did. Now that I'm looking at it in retrospect, the story arc of Bondrewd and Prushka almost feels tailor-made to be a movie, and while I don't think it's a perfect adaptation overall, I think the way the voice acting, animation, and that godly, absolutely heavenly Kevin Penkin soundtrack conveys the raw emotion and heart in this story arc, it's really hard for me to imagine a source reader or even an anime only walking out of it disappointed. I have a lot more I'd like to say about Dawn of the Deep Soul, but I might try to make it into a separate video instead. However, if you haven't seen Made in Abyss yet, what are you doing? Go watch it, go cry your eyes out, and then watch this excellent film. Moving from one master of suffering to another, Warlords of Sigrdrifa is the newest project from ReZero creator Tape Nugatsuki. And you should know by now that I love this man. I love this man to death. He is incredibly competent at writing character drama, comedy, mystery, you name it, all of which are immediately apparent within Sigrdrifa's double-length first episode. As usual, my anime list would know quality anime if it hit them with an F15J, but you do have to get a little ways into this first episode before the main appeal starts sinking in. We're following a group of so-called Valkyries that protect the Earth from a force of supernatural, alien, kaiju, whatever. It's a pretty standard setup that might turn you away in the beginning, but what really makes this series enjoyable so far is the excellent dialogue and interactions between all of the main cast. I was kind of instantly endeared to all of them as soon as they started speaking to each other, and one thing I've always loved about Tappei's writing is the way he introduces you to characters. Both in ReZero and this, I always felt like I had an understanding of what archetype a character was supposed to be, but then as I got more and more time with them, saw more and more of their interactions, I realized I was kind of not right about what their personality was at all. Within this premiere episode alone, you can already start picking up on a lot of subtext and nuance to these main girls, and that's pretty exciting to me. If ReZero is any indication, this will be a story filled with twists and turns and suffering, and I can't wait to see where it goes. We spent a lot of time talking about the more action-packed and thrilling types of series this season, and I'm sure the cultured among you are thinking, okay, but when are you going to talk about the Yuri, you freaking hack? Well, wait no further. Adachi and Shimamura is a romance drama about a couple of delinquent girls who skip class and play ping pong together. I don't know what it is about anime and ping pong that always makes for quality animated television, but I'm not really complaining. This is easily one of my favorite premieres this season, and it's because the dynamic and relationship between these two girls just feels so unbelievably genuine and down to earth. If you were kind of put off by how trite and exaggerated and dumb the dialogue in Yuri and Assault Lily was, then this is like the complete opposite to that. These characters feel like real human beings, their dialogue is natural, their voice acting is superb, and all of it is in service of really getting you attached to the way that their relationship progresses. So many times in these types of shows, even in some of my favorites, the relationship building feels less like an actual relationship and more like pandering to get weeboos to buy merch. But I don't really get that sense at all from this story. I'm hoping it has a satisfying conclusion and into their arc, because so far, it's had an amazing start. Another show this season that had great human interactions and an amazing start is Taiso Samurai, another series that I really couldn't tell you what's going on with the opinions at my anime list, and one that I basically didn't even know about until the first episode had already dropped. And it's kind of bizarre I didn't know about this before it dropped, because it seems like bait intentionally made for me. Character drama about a washed-up athlete? I'm there. An emotional and ridiculously sweet single father and daughter dynamic? Please. Ninjas and that talking bird from Tomoko Market? What the hell is this series? Taiso Samurai is so weird and so quirky, yet has more humanity than a lot of other series I've seen this season, and I think that all comes down to how great and effective that central bond is between this father and his daughter. I'm glad that single father anime series have been making a comeback this year, because we don't get enough of them, and they always result in some great emotional storytelling. The main character Jotaro starts off immediately atypical and kind of weird, just like the series itself, but by the end of the episode, I came to appreciate how consistent and earnest he was written as a character. Even in the defining emotional moment at the end of episode 1, every piece of dialogue feels distinct and personally meant for him, and that's not always something that's easy to achieve. This series has a lot of promise and a lot of risk considering it's an original, but I'm willing to believe it'll turn out alright just because of how great this opening episode was. Being surprised by thoughtful and charming character dramas this season seems to be a trend, because another one of my favorites happens to be about magic and witches without any of the mindless action that you would usually associate with that. Okay, there is a little bit of that, but by all means, Wandering Witch: The Journey of Elaina is more of a character-driven adventure about a young girl who becomes a witch and ends up encountering a lot of Kino's Journey-esque episodic storylines. While I haven't seen enough of those storylines to say how they hold up, the setup for Elaina as a character and how she becomes a witch was a lot more emotional and dramatic than I had expected going in. If you saw the PV for this, you might have made the same mistake I did, thinking it was just going to be some chilled out slice of life snooze fest, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. And yes, I am prepared to be slapped by source readers for my poor judgment. Because of its more dramatic and almost psychological approach to establishing this character, I fell in love with Elaina by the end of this episode, and there's just such a great little arc with her character that I imagine will reflect how she learns and develops from all of the future storylines she encounters. Top that off with an absolutely incredible production from C2C, and you have a journey you probably shouldn't miss out on. One show you're probably already missing out on, though, is Magatsu Wahrheit, and no, I won't apologize for possibly butchering that name. This might be my anime list's biggest deception yet, because you look at this user rating on their website and probably assume, okay, that's trash, moving on. But I can tell you after watching this first episode that it absolutely is not. The thing I thought the most while watching Magatsu is that it just felt really intelligent, and I know that immediately sounds really pretentious, but the way this episode establishes its rich world, so many different factions and characters, and lays them all out over one intersecting plotline impressed me more times than I could count, and what impressed me even more is how effortless they made it feel. What's even better is that in contrast to the usual perspectives in anime you get that are mostly black and white in terms of morality, Magatsu seems like it's constantly challenging you to find the person or group that you agree with more, and that is what makes the conflicts and situations that arise in this episode all the more interesting. That also adds to the so far excellent world building that feeds you just enough information to get invested in where our sides are coming from without ever feeling like it's over-explaining or info dumping. Magatsu is one of my biggest surprises this season, and I hope that as more episodes release, it also draws in more viewers and more positivity. Before we get to my final and favorite recommendation of the video, however, like every season, there's always a bunch of good shows in here that I don't really have much to say about, but simultaneously would be criminal if I didn't mention to some capacity. So let's begin the lightning round. Burn the Witch is yet another Shonen Jump adaptation, but with a movie budget to match and Taikubo style for days. It may be a bit incoherent, but there's a lot of great ideas in this fictional reverse London that makes it a fun ride from start to finish. Noelle is my wife, and none of you can have her. Talentless Nana, on the other hand, is a series that feels like a shonen for most of its first episode before it twists and turns in all of the right ways to make you say, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting. Go in without looking at the premise and you might just have a cool time. Love Live is the meme series that never stops giving, however Nijigasaki High School Idol Club is my first experience with the franchise, and so far it's a lot of moe, a lot of wondering why more anime characters don't have dyed hair tips, and oh my god, these performances. Another individual who never stops giving is the Clannad and Angel Beats creator Jun Maeda, and it's time to board his wild ride yet again with The Day I Became God. Unassumingly a fast-paced, quick-witted comedy about a girl who can seemingly tell the future, with expressive animation from PA Works and a guarantee that you will probably be sobbing your eyes out by the end of the final episode. Where I don't think you'll be sobbing is in the first episode of Tonikawa Over the Moon for You, a romance comedy that is cute wholesomeness incarnate about a dude who gets hit by a truck and refuses to be hospitalized just so he can ask out a random girl he saw on the street. What a Chad. It's bizarre as hell, but also worth it to get to those top-tier mushy and feel-good interactions that I live for. Wholesome comedy can also be found in Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, a cute parody that manages to repeat one joke and actually make it work, as a princess within enemy territory is willing to resort to downright murder just to get a good night's sleep. It's probably not going to make you laugh out loud every single line, but it's consistently entertaining and enjoyable. What you will be laughing out loud at, though, is Dropout Idol Fruit Tart, a series about a bunch of individually failed entertainers that come together to create an idol group and reality series about their come-up. I know even hearing the word idol might turn some people away, but just give this one a chance because it's genuinely the funniest series I've seen this season. Sport Climbing Girls is another surprisingly enjoyable series this season, despite being rough around the edges, and no, that wasn't a joke about the muscular girls. It's kind of like a diet Haikyuu in the way it introduces and endears you to a sport that you probably didn't care about beforehand, and while I wouldn't say the execution is nearly as good as Haikyuu, it's still got that hardened likability that makes it a fun time all the way through. Speaking of fun times, Moriarty the Patriot is good old-fashioned detective greatness, but with an interesting twist. Instead of following a tired Sherlock Holmes mom's do-gooder, Moriarty's a fascinating protagonist because he's kind of messed up as a person himself. That leads to some interesting morally gray situations and resolutions that will make you wonder if anything actually got resolved at all. As it turns out, murder is the answer to everything. And with that, we're almost out of anime to talk about, but there is one left in here that spoke to me on a level different from any other this season. Something that appealed to me more than the childlike joy of the adventure of Dai, more than the authentic and down-to-earth relationship in Adachi and Shimamura, and more than the tragic and hilarious sequences in Jujutsu Kaisen. Akudama Drive is one of the coolest, most absolutely insane, over-the-top, stylish, and amazing premiere episodes I've seen in recent memory. And there's so many places to start here with why it's as good as it is. From Danganronpa creator Kazutaka Kodaka comes a fittingly video game-inspired premise about a group of criminals called Akudama, who are all individually given a mysterious objective of rescuing another Akudama set to be executed. It's an intriguing setup that's immediately interesting and engaging, and where the episode goes with these criminals, how they interact, the world they live in, it's all constantly entertaining and never takes itself too seriously. I mean, within the first 5 minutes of the episode, you have this happen, and just look at it. It's awesome. It's overflowing with charisma and style, the pacing is fast without ever feeling rushed, and the characters and world are instantly unique and well established. Akudama Drive is literally a treat in every way imaginable, and I'll definitely be watching it to the very end, hoping it keeps that awesomeness. And that is every anime you should be watching from fall 2020. I feel like I covered a ridiculous amount of quality series here, but chances are someone out there still feels like I missed something. So you know what? You let me know in the comments what your favorite anime are so far from this season. You can also follow me on Twitter because I really need more people to hype up the Jujutsu Kaisen ED with, and join my Discord server, a fun community of people where we chat and watch stuff together, and where we'll actually be watching the Made in Abyss movie this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I think that's going to be pretty awesome, so join for it if you're interested. Or you can just do none of those things, go back to being drowned in good anime, and continue having a great day. I love you, and see you next time.